Hello everyone. So in today's video we're going to be looking at different economic systems and economies, and this is part of economics in ASL CIE. So what are economic systems? It's basically in a way how a country which is used to solve the basic economic problem. And what is the basic economic problem? Is that there's unlimited wants but limited resources, which leads to scarcity. And another keyword we need to learn about is allocative mechanism. It's basically how how economy's resources are allocated between different uses, and this is seen primarily through product possibility curves, which we'll look at later on. There are three types of economies in the world. There's a market economy, there's a planned economy, and a mixed economy. And we're going to be looking at each of these in the context of economics and the disadvantages and advantages of each. So, what is a market economy? This is basically when all the economic resources available are allocated all by the private sector. So these are firms and businesses, and there's not really any real examples, as there's almost all like no country which has no government intervention, and the price of an item is mostly set using something called the price mechanism. It's basically the process in which the change in price is due to the demand and supply curves and where they meet due to changes in the different resources available. I'll be looking at demand and supply curves later on, so you can't really understand this, but that's basically how market economies are set. So, advantages and disadvantages of market economies. So, advantages obviously is governments can concentrate anywhere else, since governments aren't responsible for any of the price mechanisms and implementing the price, so they can put the effort somewhere. And since profit will be the main incentives for businesses, they will be more innovative and they'll try to develop new products to become more cost effective to ultimately lead to more better, obviously, profits. And another thing is consumer welfare. Since they'll become more cost effective, there should be theoretically lower prices, but most of the time this is not true, since they'll keep the same prices and maximize their profit. And another thing will be the maximization of consumer and producer surplus. This is seen in the demand and supply curve, which we'll look at later on in another video. However, the advantages are obviously there'll be a lack of public goods, so goods supplied by the government. This is because the government won't be putting in any money or any influencing the prices. So firms would not want to waste money, since they won't earn anything for police defense at all. So they won't do that. And there'd be under consumption of merit goods, such as if you take the example of vaccines. Since merit goods are goods that basically do not have proper information in the economy and is being underproduced and underconsumed. So vaccines, since people won't know much about it, it'll be much more expensive. People are less likely to buy it. And deep merit goods like alcohol and tobacco, which is basically when there's false information in the economy, so it's overproduced and overconsumed, they will be produced even more, since they're also addictive. And there'll also be negative externalities, that is basically things which you cause. So obviously they want to maximize production, so there'll be more noise and visual pollution, which can affect the government and which can affect the environment. Next, we're talking about a planned economy, and this is an economy where all the allocations are done by the state and government. An example would be North Korea and maybe Cuba. So an advantage of this obviously is, since the state and the government has control over everything, they'll be providing what's best for most people, and they can decide which goods they want to produce, so they can choose what to produce. So if a government wants to produce more corn, they'll produce more corn, and they might lose out on producing less rice. And then price stability is also very likely, since the government is controlling everything. They can choose when to increase prices and what's best for the consumers. And unemployment rate will be very, very low. This is because governments will want to have people working to give them income, so they can tax on it and take some money. However, the disadvantages is there's obviously bureaucracy, and there'll be firm inefficiency. Basically, since firms don't have an incentive to get profit, which is the main reason, they're less likely to innovate and they'll become less productive, since they have no reason to make new products to maximize profits. And also, due to this, there'll be less option diversity for people when choosing things, and there'll also be likely of worse quality of goods and services. So, now we're going to looking at mixed economies. This is basically when the economic system, so resource allocation, is done by both the private and public sector, so governments, and almost any country in the world has this. So India, United Kingdom, and Canada. However, the price mechanism is also mostly private, but there is also government intervention, such as in inflation and this crazy high prices of medicine or vaccines. Governments will intervene and just set a limit on the amount you can charge an item to make it fair. Next, we're going to be looking at the disadvantages and advantages. There's obviously ownership, like it will be divided between the private and public sector. And the aim of the private sector over here is to have profit and satisfaction for the customers. However, the public sector's aim will be providing better resources for the general public. However, there'll be a big difference between the private and public sectors, and this is because governments will still want to tax the private sector greatly, and they'll want to set regular boundaries on the prices you can put for the private sector for products, so profit can be still capped. And resource allocation, like we talked about, it can depend on the market forces or direct measures by the public. So now we're going to be looking at not really type of market economy, economic system, but it's a transitional economy, and this is just basically when it takes place is when you're going from a planned economy to a mixed economy. So there's some problems which will occur. Is firstly there'll be large amounts of inflations, since from a planned economy governments are setting prices, but to now private firms are setting prices which want to maximize profit. So cost of everything will increase, hence inflation. There'll also be a rise of unemployment. Like I said, mixed economies want to maximize profit, so they'll want to lower their fixed costs such as labor, while planned economy want to maximize their employment since they get to pay taxes. And there'll also be a reduction in welfare services. So this is because governments are less likely to intervene and do resource allocation. Private firms will want to maximize profits, so they'll not want to waste money on welfare services which are given for free to people. So let's just do some practice questions now. So Cuba is implementing free market reforms. Free market is basically a market economy. What is going to be the advantage of this? Well, we know in a market economy there's private diversification, so more goods and services will be offered, hence option A. There cannot be B since it does not really relate to any problem. There will be a decrease in public goods since it's going from a planned economy to a free market economy, so it can't be that. And there'll be less consumption of goods with external costs, it cannot be that also. So next question is, what is the disadvantage of a market economic system? So what's a market economic system? When it's fully set by firms. And what do we know a disadvantage of that? Since firms want to maximize profit, it will lead to higher cost, hence option C. Option D is obviously wrong since there will be overproduction of tobacco and alcohol. And in a market economy, there is no intervention of government, so it cannot be that. And entrepreneurs will have the incentive to produce what customers want since they want to make more profit, so it cannot be option A. So it's option C. Next, we're going to be looking at this question. So China is the world's second largest economy and is becoming more like a market economy. Which policy would contribute directly to such a change? So this would be not a B, since encouraging customers to spend more and save less doesn't make sense. And reducing exports and encouraging more imports, again, this is not related to private economy and public economy. Another thing is transferring the wealth from state sectors to private sectors. This is the main reason. Since it wants to become more of a market economy, it doesn't mean it's fully a market economy, so it can't be abolishing state control. It's like a mixed economy where you want to transfer the money from a state sector to a private sector, hence option D. Next, we're going to be looking at what role does the private sector play in a mixed economic system. So obviously it doesn't control all economic activities as that's the government and private sector. And again, both the government and private sector have access to influence on resource allocation. Private sector will be option C, since again they're contributing together, they're working together in resource allocation. And again, option D is a fully private sector, which will be a market economy. So option C is the correct answer. And finally, the last question. What are the reasons for adopting a mixed economic system is, again, it's not elimination of public goods, so governments are still interfering. It can't be that. It cannot be ensuring absolute private ownership of this. This is because it's a mixed economy. Government's still gonna contribute, so it can't be that. It will be option C, since you want to balance economic growth and income distribution. Since in planned economies, all people get the same amount, not relative to their income, while in a mixed economy, obviously people who have more money are willing to pay more, and the prices will increase, but we'll still have economic growth due to public goods. So option C, and it cannot be option D, as this is of market economy when they want to maximize profit. So thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoy, and best of luck for your exams.